Happy Friday, February the 28th. Welcome into another edition of the DFS Report. Hope everyone's having a fine Friday afternoon. We have a really nice looking 3-game slate. Zach, you're looking very Dr. Evil right now.
Yeah, that's kind of the vibes that I'm going for here. Ready to take over the DraftKings world tonight and win $100 million.
Love that for you. I swapped the backlight to green today because hopefully that's where all of our lineups are. So we're feeling pretty good here. The DFS report. Hopefully, big night in store. We got a 3-game slate, as I mentioned, and you got a 7 and 8 and a 9 p.m. start. It's a nice staggered start. 3 really interesting games tonight. We'll start with the goalies, then we'll break these things down one by one. Just a reminder, if you want to have an opportunity to get entered into our draw for a $50 Nation Gear gift card tonight, all you got to do is drop a comment in the live chat during today's show, and you will be automatically entered. And we will throw all the names of people who dropped a comment throughout the show into a randomizer wheel at the end of the show and draw our, I think, 4th $50 gift card winner of the season. So all you got to do is drop a comment in the live chat, and you will be entered for free. So let's get into it. We got Igor Shesterkin starting for the New York Rangers, who have a plethora of game time decisions tonight, and it'll be Anthony Stellaris for the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are expected to have William Nylander. Chris Tanev will not be available tonight. Jake Oettinger gets to start for the Dallas Stars, and it is likely going to be Darcy Kemper for the LA Kings after getting a night off on Tuesday. And then in the final game of the night, we've got Mackenzie Blackwood for the Colorado Avalanche, and we are projecting to see Philip Gustafsson for the Minnesota Wild after Marc-Andre Fleury got the nod on Thursday. So those are your 6 confirmed, likely, or projected starting goalies. Let's dive right into game number 1. You've got the New York Rangers hosting the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Leafs are minus 114 road favorites in this one, 3.2 implied total there. In terms of the matchups here, it does grade out as the lowest event game of the night. Really poor matchups on the New York Rangers side of things. Outstanding matchups across the board on the Toronto Maple Leafs side of things. So, yeah, looks like a pretty good spot to target the Toronto Maple Leafs. Specifically, that top line, as we know, they grade out tremendously at 5v5. We did see them split this line up a little bit last game. Bobby McMahon saw some time on that top line, but in the morning skate today, they were back to Nyes, Matthews, and Marner. The second line has actually been playing a lot more coming out of the Four Nations break. That's the Tavares-Nylander duo. But with Pontus Holmberg on the left side, their metrics have been quite poor over the last year and this year combined. We've seen a decent sample size with that trio together, and they really haven't generated much at all. So I find it a little bit more difficult to get to Toronto too with Holmberg up there, but they are playing a ton. So we will definitely talk about them here. And the Toronto 3, we know that they've had some success this year, maybe more lucky than good, but they are still generating 29 scoring chances, 4 per 60. They have scored 3.1 goals, 4 per 60. Zach, I think one thing that we're learning, and we're kind of learning on the fly here with this new DraftKings pricing, is that there's literally no value basically at all. Very hard to find good value. Like, even yesterday we were talking about a few lines that feel cheaper than they should be, and they're like $20,000, but then you go to pair them with literally anybody, and unless you're playing two $2,500 defensemen and punting goalie, like, it's hard to really stack 2 good lines together. It does look like there's maybe a little bit more value on tonight's slate than we've seen the last couple nights. Like yesterday, it seemed like every single decent line was $18,000 to $21,000, and it was so hard to piece together. And we saw some of the winning lineups last night as a result just being like ridiculous, basically lottery tickets. So we're learning on the fly with you guys as we try to navigate these new pricing, and we'll do the best of our ability here to try and break it down and find you the best value that we can on tonight's slate. So, Zach, let's start with Toronto 1. Obviously, a really nice matchup here for them. They're going to see a lot of that JT Miller, Mika Zibanejad line. JT Miller, by the way, is a game time decision. Missed yesterday's practice due to illness, but did skate today. And they haven't been very good defensively. The metrics are pretty poor for that entire top 6 defensively, and that's going to be who the Matthews line sees basically 70% of their ice time against tonight. So, really nice spot here for that Matthews line. They also have the number 1 power play advantage tonight. That Maple Leafs power play 9th best over the last 10 games. 26th PK for the Rangers is the worst on the slate. So things setting up very nicely here for Toronto 1. And then obviously Toronto 2 might have to do most of their damage on the power play, but you get a nice, a little bit cheaper to go down to Tavares and Nylander than to obviously Matthews and Marner. Matthews, the most expensive player on the slate at $9K, Marner at $7,500. Zach, how are you planning on navigating the Maple Leafs this evening?
Yeah, Toronto one looks like they're a smash play here tonight for me. I'll definitely be all in on them here tonight on this slate. Only projecting for 12.5% ownership. To me, that number seems a little bit low based off of some of these metrics that we're seeing here. The Leafs have been really hot on the road here as of late. 7-3 in their last 10 road games, 4-1 in their last 5. The Rangers, meanwhile, they come in off the back of a little bit of a road trip here where they had some success, but 2-3 in their last 5 games at Madison Square Garden. We've seen this Rangers team be a really fragile bunch here at many different points throughout the season. To me, it does feel like a great spot here for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I know we were talking about it a little bit earlier, you and I, before we came on the show. I absolutely hammered the Leafs on the money line today. They look like they're in a really great spot. For me, going to have a lot more of that Toronto 1 line than I think I am Toronto 2 and Toronto 3. It's pretty easy. Let me catch myself here before I continue. It's not easy to build, but it feels a little bit easier to build here tonight. You talk about some of the value options that are available tonight. It feels like most of that's kind of coming on the blue line. It looks like we got a good number of guys in that 3K range here tonight that look like solid value options. So I think you can get up to these really expensive lines here tonight. I'm definitely not going to be shying away from Toronto 1, though. Projected for 12.5% ownership, pretty easily going to be double the field on them here on this slate tonight.
Yeah, and the Rangers are coming off a game in which they beat the Islanders 5-1. But in that game, they had just 18 shots on goal. They were the Corsi 4 was 82-46 in favor of the Islanders. So they were pretty drastically outplayed in that game despite the win. And that's become kind of a theme for them, not really playing all that great, especially at 5v5. Their last couple games not looking very strong coming out of the break against the Penguins and the Islanders in terms of the metrics, despite getting wins in both of those games. So I do think this is a Maple Leafs team that's better, obviously, than both the Penguins and the Islanders, and probably can do a little bit more damage tonight. And as you mentioned, really, a lot of ownership coming in on McKinnon in Colorado 1 for obvious reasons, and that's really leading to Toronto 1 being under-owned. And it does feel quite similar to the other night on Wednesday when Colorado was very popular in a 3-game slate, and we also really liked Winnipeg 1, and we were, you didn't have to play too much Winnipeg 1 to be way over the field. And, for the most part, it worked. It just happened to be a Colorado 1 nuke, which is obviously possible on any slate and looks very likely again tonight. But if they don't nuke, you're going to have you can have a ton of leverage on Toronto 1. And I think it's a good spot to have a lot of leverage, the same way it was with Winnipeg 1. You just got to hope that, maybe Philip Gustafson closes the door tonight. Toronto 2, as I mentioned, I do find it a little bit more difficult to get there. I'm going to have some exposure, probably around 10%, mostly just Tavares, Nylander minis, maybe Holmberg if I need that value. Like I said, it's hard to find value, but just not enough offense at 5v5. They're going to be so reliant on that power play, which they can obviously get there. But I think they're, with kind of how low owned Toronto 1 is, I don't think it's really all that necessary to force feed Toronto 2. And then I do think Toronto 3 is an interesting value option tonight, right? Like if you want to jam in Colorado 1, you're going to be, looking for cheap options to pair with them. And I think Toronto 3 is in a pretty good spot tonight at $12,000. McMahon's been awesome this year. Max Domi, Nick Robertson, they've had their fair share of success at times throughout the season. As I mentioned, the metrics are pretty strong for that bunch. The matchup's pretty decent too. You're going to see just a pretty even mix across the board of the New York Rangers. But like I said, the Rangers were caved in pretty heavily at 5v5 against the Islanders the other night. Same thing goes with that Penguins game. So, that opens the door for lines like Toronto 3 to potentially have big nights. Since I mentioned it off the top of the show, we've had about 400 more people join. If you want a chance to get a $500 gift card to Nation Gear today, all you have to do is drop a single comment in the live chat throughout today's show, and you'll automatically be entered to win. At the end of the show, we will do a draw. So if you missed that announcement at the start, feel free to drop a comment and we will pull your name potentially by the end of the show. On the Rangers side of things, I think it's obviously a little bit more difficult, right? The Maple Leafs have been pretty stout defensively for the most part this season. Without Chris Tanev tonight, maybe a little bit leakier. When you take a look at the Rangers, it does feel like it's mostly going to have to be that top line. They're reuniting Trocheck, Panarin, and Lafreniere. They've had pretty good year together, right? Some really huge games, some really disappointing games that we've lived through, but decent spot here. They still play the most among anybody on that team. And then, with the new injury to Adam Fox, they're going to be rolling out 5 forwards on that top power play unit. So they're going to fully correlate on that top power play unit along with Zibanejad and JT Miller if he's in the lineup tonight. So they got that going for them as well. The power play isn't a bit of a tough spot, but the Leafs PK hasn't been all that great here. 21st. Mediocre power play for the Rangers as of late. So they do have the 4th best advantage overall. I don't mind getting to New York. This game does feel like it could get high scoring. They have enough guns to obviously put the puck in the back of the net. We've seen that as of late coming out of the break as well. And you look at this Dallas LA game, it does have the feel of a game that could be lower scoring potentially. Colorado might just completely dismantle Minnesota. So the Rangers could end up being the 3rd highest scoring team on this slate potentially, if this game ends up turning into a bit of a track meet. So I don't mind getting to a little bit of New York tonight. New York 1 grades out 5th best for us. They are seeing a healthy amount of ownership though, but they are just 17,400. So for obvious reasons, with the lack of value, with the new pricing, 17,400 for the top line that fully correlates on the top power play, it's pretty easy to get there. I like them quite a bit. I feel fairly similar to the field in that regard. And then the second line, super interesting as well. Very cheap at 15,000. Will Cooley projects as one of the best value plays in the entire slate at $3,100. Projected for 21.6% ownership. Miller and Zibanejad, they've been fine since Miller came over from the Canucks. I still feel better about New York 1, but you can't really ignore the value here that you could potentially get out of New York 2. But I think the ownership is pretty steep. I think that I'll probably come in under owned on the Rangers as a whole because I do think this is a tough matchup. So Stolarz makes sense as a bit of a chalk buster tonight. I think you have plenty of leverage with Stolarz. I'll get to New York, but probably not quite as much as the field is. How about you?
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. Most of my interest is coming in on that top line. I like the fact that they've reunited these guys. I mean, we've played them a lot over the last couple of years when these 3 are together. The truth of the matter is like you said, like the Maple Leafs have been pretty stingy defensively as of late, giving up just 1.9 goals against per hour at 5-on-5 over the last 10 games. So some strong defensive play here from the Leafs. It does feel like a bit of a tough spot for me too to kind of get to the field on this Rangers ownership. I mean, I've got some investment, in this Leaf side already here. I think I'm still good to kind of get to 15, maybe to a little 20% action on New York 1 just to get a little bit of leverage over the field there. This second line, I got a bit of a harder time getting there. Will Cooley, I mean, just him alone looks like a great value play here tonight, but he is drawing 21% of the ownership, or 21% ownership here on this slate, which is the highest of any of these Rangers forwards. So a lot of people are kind of looking at him as a value option here. He's had some decent shot volume as of late, 7.3 shots on goal per hour of ice time over his last 20 games played. Not much success against the Leafs in his career, though. Just 1 assist in 5 games for him. Obviously we got the question mark about JT Miller. Is he going to be in? Is he going to be out? The one nice thing, though, is that, this is the first game of the night. So we'll be able to know fairly early on. And you'll be able to set your lineups accordingly. So, I think for me, I'll probably be coming in at or maybe a little bit over the field on New York 1 and probably under the field on New York 2. I think I'm good to mix in 10% there just in case this game does get a little bit of a higher scoring one. But I think there's some decent game stack options you can kind of build here in this game as well, which is definitely one route that you can go here on a small 3-game slate like this.
Ryan brings up a good point. Don't both teams have 5 forwards on the power play? And they do. And I don't know if we've ever seen that. Like, I can't recall a game in which the 2 teams going head to head both have 5 forwards on the top power play unit, but we will see that tonight. Pretty interesting there. The Leafs haven't really found all that much success on the power play with Morgan Riley this year. Adam Fox obviously being out, leaves the Rangers pretty shorthanded. Hi, do you think the Rangers are super shorthanded today? Like, yeah. I think based on what we saw at the morning skate, I do think JT Miller plays. It also looks like K'Andre Miller plays. If K'Andre Miller doesn't play, I'm definitely upgrading the Maple Leafs, right? Like, he's probably their best blue liner on this decor right now. And if he's out, they start to look really thin on the back end. So it didn't work, obviously, with Nashville last night in a similar spot. The Jets on the back-to-back didn't get it done. But I do think if Miller doesn't end up playing, then I would upgrade the Leafs a bit. But I do think both Millers are in the lineup tonight. It sounds a little bit less likely that Chris Kreider plays, which isn't a huge issue overall. But yeah, if both Millers are in the lineup, they should be fine overall. Okay, let's move on to game number 2. We've got the Dallas Stars and the LA Kings. The Dallas Stars going back to kind of what we're not used to seeing out of them, but a little bit more of a familiar look. We did see Granlund move up to the top line. a game ago for a little bit. He's going to be back on the second line to start tonight with Duchesne and Marchment. Logan Stankoven, who's been in a bit of the doghouse, kind of in and out of the lineup recently, fourth line for a while. He's going to get the promotion back up to the top line, offer some value tonight. And then Ben Johnson, Dadonov together on the third line. We've seen plenty of them together this season. In terms of the matchups, highest event game of the night. Pretty bleak matchups though across the board for the Dallas Stars. We know how good defensively the LA Kings are. Pretty good matchups over here for LA. And we talked about it on what it would have been Tuesday, maybe. The LA Kings, they put Fiala, Byfield, Kempe together 2 games ago, and it worked splendidly. And then they started the last game with their usual lines, and then they eventually went back to Fiala, Byfield, Kempe. And they're just going to put them together tonight. They're just going to start together, and I think that's a good idea. I'll bring up their numbers here in a second. They've been really, really good together in a short sample size. As a result, you're going to have Turcotte, Kopitar, and Laferriere together. Turcotte basically just doesn't play. He's going to see like 10 minutes tonight, maybe. So, maybe Kopitar, Laferriere. But I think that this makes your decision pretty easy right now. Like, we've always been just kind of looking for one LA line to just step up and be the go-to line. And that's so clearly the Fiala, Byfield, Kempe line as kind of the highest upside, highest ceiling line for this team. And then the Fogle, Deneau, Moore line, quite clearly just the value line. So they have pretty 2 defined roles, which is not been the case here for the Kings for basically like 2 full years. So yeah, really interesting here. 18,800 for LA1, not drawing much ownership whatsoever, which is extremely interesting to me. The matchup for them, I got some more numbers to bring up here in a second, but let's just start really quickly with what they've done thus far. So Fiala, Quentin Byfield, and Adrian Kempe. So they haven't played together a ton, but the early results are insane. 21 minutes together thus far. They're averaging 4.05 expected goals for per 60, 37 scoring chances, 24 high dangers. So those numbers are obviously insanely good. They're going to see about 64% of their ice time against Dallas too. When you look at the overall numbers here for Dallas too, the defensive metrics not great, right? They certainly don't stand out, but they're in fact much worse in the smaller sample size with Mason Marchment and Mikael Granlund alongside Matt Duchesne. Let me bring those up here for you. So in 65 minutes, so pretty decent sample size. They've given up 3.05 expected goals against per 60. So a much higher number than you see on the charts, just in a smaller sample. 28 scoring chances against 12.6 high danger chances. So all the defensive metrics are in fact quite a bit worse than what the chart showed. Just a little bit too small of a sample size for me to use confidently. But it just, to me, you can pretty easily upgrade LA1's matchup a little bit here and feel very good about playing them tonight, especially if they come in at average of 6% ownership. It's just far too low, and I'll end up being 3 or 4 times the field probably on that ownership. So I like LA1 a lot, and as I mentioned, LA3 does not have the upside of LA1 obviously, but they're significantly cheaper, $4,800 cheaper to full stack. Really like Fogle more as a mini stack. They both offer pretty good shot volume at really cheap prices. When it's hard to find salary relief, Fogle and Moore are pretty good in that regard. So like both of them as value options, but LA1 feels like they are a tremendous leverage play tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a lot of interest here on the Kings side, right around that first line and that third line. Thank you to the LA Kings for putting this lineup together as they are, because we finally know who we can confidently target on a regular basis. And it's going to be LA 1 and 3 with these current lines. So, to me, it feels like, LA 1's got the higher ceiling, but I think the third line has maybe as good of a floor, especially in terms of the shot volume as that top line does. They're also coming in, fairly significantly cheaper. I mean, $4,800 cheaper. That opens up a lot more for you on this slate here. Obviously, Warren Fogle is a guy who's got tremendous shot volume so far this season in a depth role, 8.4 shots on goal per hour. We're finally starting to see Trevor Moore trying to load up on some of those shots here, as well as of late, 7.1 shots on goal per hour of ice time over his last 20 games as well. So I got a lot of interest in this Kings side of things, to be totally honest with you. And this top line, like, they look excellent as well here. Both offenses have been rolling here as of late. The Kings defensively, they've been pretty good. as well, even though Dallas, kind of struggling defensively here as of late. So this feels like a really good spot to kind of take advantage and get yourself different from the field here because, there's quite a bit of ownership coming in on this Dallas Stars side of things. And, I can understand why. I mean, you take a look at these offensive metrics for them as of late, they have been absolutely rolling here. The top two lines look like they're in pretty okay spots here. This third line is really kind of interesting to me. 4.8 goals per hour of ice time. I mean, these guys have been absolutely on fire. Largely Wyatt Johnson and Evgeny Dadonov. Never really thought I would say the word offensively on fire and Evgeny Dadonov in the same sentence, but hey, what a world we're living in these days, right? For him, 1.3 goals per hour over his last 20 games, 1.5 individual expected goals, 3.4 points per hour for Dadonov over his last 20 games. He's been great. The one thing that's kind of interesting about all three of these guys for me on this third line, they've all had success throughout their career against the LA Kings. Dadonov, 5 goals, 12 points, 14 games played. He's never been a big offensive guy, so I think those are pretty interesting numbers. Wyatt Johnson, 4 goals, 6 points in 8 games, and Jamie Benn, 17 goals, 40 points in 51 games. I think they're a decent little pivot option, maybe a little bit of a way to get yourself different from the field here tonight.
As John points out, the Evgeny Dadonov slander is real here from Zach. How soon we forget that he had 65 points and 70-point seasons in 2018, 2019 with the Florida Panthers. He used to be a dog. Yeah.
Sure.
I think he played with Alexander Barkov almost exclusively. Yeah, no, in fairness, he had 15 points 2 years ago and 23 points last year. So we are far from that. We are technically far from those days where he was unbelievable. But I mean, he was quite good. When he first came over from the KHL, his numbers were solid. We certainly have seen him lose a step here in age 35 season. So I think the slander is somewhat justified, but he's certainly bounced back as of late. Yeah, man, I think the Stars are a bit of a tougher play tonight. You take a look at the team here, team metrics as a whole. The Kings very, very good defensively. The Stars have struggled a little bit. I think it's pretty easy to see why the Stars have struggled a little bit too, right? This blue line's pretty banged up. You take Miro Heiskanen and Bichelle out of the picture, and they leaves them pretty shorthanded. Obviously Thomas Harley's a stud. Bringing in Cody Ceci helps a little bit, but the third pair, Brendan Smith and Matt Dumba, is atrocious. So, not the greatest blue line in the league right now for sure. And but up front, man, they've been hot. Robertson scoring much more similar to what we've seen from him in recent years after a tough start to the season. So I don't mind getting to some Dallas, but again, this kind of feels similar to the LA team, right? Where the LA was so hard to pin down which line was going to score on a night-to-night basis. And that's the same case here with the Stars. They have 3 lines that are really capable of doing so. The second line remains very cheap. So I think that they're probably the go-to option for me just because they are a little bit cheaper. Their matchup's a little bit more difficult though than the top line. So I think there's, a route to get to both of them. The top line's got the better matchup and the better offensive numbers, just slightly more expensive at $15,900. And then, that third line is definitely kind of live for value tonight. Jamie Benn just $3,900. Evgeny Dadonov just $3,800. It's hard to find those $3,000 forwards that have upside, and both of them certainly do as of late. And Wyatt Johnson, their 6K seems fine as well. So, I'm probably going to be pretty even across the ownership for me with Dallas. It's so hard to look at a line and be like, that's the line that I want to play. Upside wise, I do think it's that top line with Robertson, Hintz. You get some salary relief with Stankov, and that's probably my favorite of the bunch if I had to pick one. But I think you can make arguments for both the second and third line as well. If you had to pick one, which one would be your favorite?
Oh man, that's a great question. I guess I'll stick with that third line, just to kind of get yourself really different here. I guess it's not really different because they're all projecting for fairly similar ownership. But to me, that one I think feels the most kind of different. You're getting Dadonov at 4.1% down there, and with the way that he's played as of late, I really like him there. I like the idea of getting up to this top line here as well. Stankoven, $3,700, not necessarily popping in terms of his raw projection or anything like that here tonight, but 10.1 shots on goal per hour of ice time over his last 20 games. Albeit a lot of that's kind of come in a depth role, averaging 14 and a half minutes per game over that stretch. But if he can keep that shot volume up on that top line, I think they look to be in a fairly decent spot tonight.
Yeah, Stankoven definitely been buried in the lineup. Healthy scratched a few times, as I mentioned. I think he'll be eager to prove he's still a top 6 winger and try to earn playing time in that top 6 more often moving forward, because it has been ugly. Just 1 goal, 2 assists in his last 14 games. It's been bleak, but again, a lot of that came in like you said, in a depth role. So hopefully, moving back up the lineup can help spark him here. And with the new pricing, $3,700 tonight, he scores 2 goals tonight. He'll probably be $6,700 tomorrow. So let's take a look at the power plays for these two teams. The Stars power play has been really, really good as of late, 3rd best in the league, going up against the 12th ranked PKs. They're the 2nd best power play advantage of the night. The Kings power play has been struggling a little bit as of late. So let's just take a look here quickly at the Dallas Stars top power play unit. You've got Hintz and Robertson together from that top line with Thomas Harley. I think that's a nice little mini stack, and you can obviously include Stankoven as well. But getting Harley in the mix there feels like a good play tonight. And then Duchesne from the 2nd line, Wyatt Johnson from the 3rd line. So bit of a mixed bag there. Obviously, helps out Dallas 1 if that's the route you want to go. I think that they make probably the most sense overall, but I do like the value you get from the other 2 lines. Any final thoughts on that game before we get to Colorado and Minnesota?
No, let's talk about why everybody's loading up on the Avs top line tonight.
Yes, they are absolutely ridiculously massive favorites tonight, minus 315. I just want to pull it up. I bet them this morning, and I don't usually place bets on teams that are like minus 250, but it just felt right given how well they've played and how bad the Wild have looked, the Wild being on a back-to-back. And that minus 250 bet's looking pretty good right now, as they're actually now out to minus 321. So just massive movement in the market. They actually opened at minus 240. So we've seen an 81-cent move in favor of the Avs tonight. Pretty easy to see why you'd want to get to them in DFS. So yeah, huge favorites tonight. 3.8 implied total is massive. Let's just, before we break down the matchups here, let's just pull up the team trends. The Wild, boy, oh boy, they just do not score goals at all. At all. They are horrific offensively. And yeah, no Kirill Kaprizov, no Joel Eriksson. Pretty easy to see why. Matchups in this one, actually fairly difficult matchups for the top 6 for the Avs. Pretty good matchups. The bottom 6, who cares? You're not going to play them anyways. Pretty similar on the other side for the Wild. Let's start with the Avs. Obviously, this top line. I was kind of crafting a tweet today, and I'm going to get back to it eventually, as I never finished it. But we thought that Lehkonen, McKinnon, Rantanen was good, and they were very good. Their underlying metrics were very good. Lehkonen, McKinnon, Netchas, these are some of the best numbers that I've ever seen while doing this. And I've been putting these charts together for 5 years now, and these are the best numbers. Like, these are like comparable and probably better than what we've seen out of Edmonton 1 at kind of like their height, right? Like, they were similar to these numbers last year. This line's so good, and it's north of like 125 minutes now. It's been a while, and they just continue to just rip it up. Like 5.1 expected goals for per 60s, insane. Like, it's insane. So yeah, they're basically matchup proof. They seem to get there every single night. The shot volume is ridiculous, and yeah, the ownership's gonna be ridiculous. But like, you basically have to play them. So yeah, they grade out by far and away the best line overall. They grade out as by far and away the highest owned line. Lehkonen drawing a little bit more ownership than he did the other night, but still fairly low in comparison to McKinnon and Netchas. Netchas price is still $7,000. I think easily one of my favorite plays on the slate. McKinnon being cheaper than Matthews doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, to be honest with you. And then Lehkonen 6K. Yeah, it's just so easy to get to these guys. On the power play, got the 3rd best power play advantage tonight, 4th best power play, starting to perk up, as we mentioned, 17th best PK for the Wild. They fully correlate the top power play unit still, alongside Makar and Jonathan Drouin. So yeah, there's just so much to like about this top line. Absolutely no reason not to jam them in, a ton. McKinnon ended up getting up to like 50% owned the other night, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case again tonight, even with like guys like Matthews and company on the slate.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's going to be a ton of ownership coming in. I mean, right now McKinnon's projected for like 35%. I could absolutely see that being higher. I think for me, I'm going to be over the field here on Colorado 1 for sure in my 20 max tonight. I'm probably going to be around 1.5 times the field, so up around 35%. The reason for that for me is you're going to get a little bit of positive leverage on Arturi Lehkonen and both Martin Necas. Lehkonen projecting for about 19% ownership, Necas 23%. Lehkonen has been just on an absolute goal scoring heater this season. It's reminiscent of like what Zach Hyman did last year, where, Hyman shot like 18, 19, 20% all season long, 54 goals in the regular season. Not saying that, Lehkonen's going to get up there or anything like that. But 24 goals in 48 games played for him this year. He's shooting like 22, 23% consistently here over his last 20 games and on the season. It is double his career average, but it looks like it's one of these heater years for Lehkonen. So count me in on this guy, 1.5 goals per hour over his last 20 games. That's even higher than Nathan MacKinnon over that stretch of time. Big issue for him, though, just not a ton of shot volume, right? 6.4 shots on goal per hour. But with the way that he's banking in goals as of late, he looks to be a great play here tonight on this slate for me. Only 6K too, nice little price point there. MacKinnon just absolutely incredible. He's back to full form, Nathan MacKinnon now. The shot volume continues to climb up to 12.2 shots on goal per hour over his last 20 now. Oh yeah, and he's also lit up the Minnesota Wild throughout his entire career. 23 goals and 62 points in 49 games played, averaging like 14 DraftKings points per game without any of the bonuses. So he looks to be absolutely incredible. All in on Colorado 1 for me here tonight. I'll be getting positive leverage on them over top of the field. I think that's a great route to go on this slate.
As Jim points out, something to keep in mind, Nichushkin did replace Lehkonen on the top power play unit last game. They split it, yeah. They had about 3 minutes and 16 seconds at top power play unit last game, minute 24 for Lehkonen, minute 28 for Nichushkin. So it is possible that Nichushkin starts there tonight. Something to keep an eye on for sure. I don't think it really downgrades Lehkonen all that much. He's still in a great spot on that top line. If anything, I think it just upgrades Nichushkin at $5,700. I won't hesitate to build Nichushkin, MacKinnon, Necas stacks either. Because it's hard to really trust that second line as a whole. But Nichushkin, we saw him just come back in a big way in his first game back. He basically hit the shot bonus in the second period. And that's kind of what you've been accustomed to seeing from Valeri Nichushkin. Just loves to get the puck on net. He had 5 shots in total in that game. And if you take a look, obviously he was banged up for a while, but if you take a look at his last 6 games, he's got 23 shots on goal in his last 6 games. So a guy that does not hesitate to shoot the puck. Easily one of my favorite one-off plays tonight. I do not mind pairing him up with Colorado 1 at all. I don't mind getting to Colorado 2 just because they are so cheap. We did see Middlestad get one the other night. Drouin is still on that top power play unit. So, I don't hate the idea, especially if Nichushkin is going to be on PP1. I don't hate the idea of a Nichushkin Drouin mini stack whatsoever. I think it's a good way to get a little bit different tonight. The ownership's obviously significantly lower on them than it is Colorado 1, so I like getting to them. I don't mind including them in Colorado 1 stacks and going on a full power play stack. I think it's doable. There's a lot of ways to build around the Avs tonight, and it's mostly going to be coming through those 5-6 players if you include Cale Makar, and maybe 7 players if you want to include Casey Middlestat. They easily feel like the best play on the slate. Like, that's just so obvious here. 3.8 implied total is just absolutely ridiculously huge favorites. And it is worth mentioning, it's Philip Gustafsson's only start against the Avs so far this year. He gave up 6 goals on 27 shots. Far from an ideal performance in that one. That was back in early January. The Avs won 6-1. Wouldn't be totally shocked if that ends up being the case again tonight. Scoring was pretty spread out that game, but Jonathan Drouin had 2 assists, a very Jonathan Drouin game. Nathan MacKinnon, a goal and an assist. Mikko Rantanen, not obviously playing tonight, goal and assist, so just give those to Martin Necas. Some depth guys got involved as well. Arturi Lehkonen also scored in that game. So, this looks like a game in which the Avs should just kind of crumple the Wild up. And you take a look at the numbers here, as I mentioned. The Wild, not terrible defensively, obviously getting great goaltending still, but really tough back-to-back going into Colorado tonight. This is a Wild team that just does not score very much whatsoever. The Wild did go with some new lines last game. I don't know if it excites you more or less, but I kind of put it in the DFO DFS Discord. I'm like, wait until you guys see these Minnesota Wild offensive numbers.
Those are wild.
Those are horrendous. Pretty embarrassing. This is like, I don't even know. I can't even think of a team that's like this bad offensively. Great defensive numbers still. They're just going to...
They're like the Chicago White Sox of the NHL right now.
Yeah, it's horrific, dude. Like, I get it. They're going to try to just suck the life out of hockey. It's the only way they can win games right now. I have no interest in playing Minnesota, really. Matt Boldy, maybe. Like Brock Faber, maybe, but full stacking this team just doesn't feel doable. Top line grades out 11th on a 3-game slate. Rossi,
Yeah,
Zuccarello, maybe, but then I guess you could go Boldy, Gaudreau. Hinostroza still on the top power play unit at 3K. I guess there's some value there on that second line. That's probably the route that I would go, to be honest with you. Hinostroza, Boldy on that top power play unit. Gaudreau's been fine at $3,300. The ice time will be there given all the injuries. The matchup's not horrendous. Like, the offensive numbers are just putrid, but I'm not going to get a lot of them, but I'm going to get some of them in the mix here. So this is very reminiscent of the slate we had 2 nights ago, the other 3-game slate. Winnipeg one is kind of the new Toronto one in this slate, and Minnesota kind of feels like how Vancouver felt in that slate, where during the show I really didn't have all that much interest in Vancouver, and then as the night progressed, I was became more and more interested in some of their plays, and I ended up playing Hedel and Garland, and they worked out. So I do think that there's probably a player or two here from Minnesota that might work out. And, maybe it's just the value with Gaudreau and Hinostroza. Maybe it's just Hinostroza on the top power play with decent shot volume. Maybe it's just Boldy. Maybe it's just Faber. I think there's a couple of okay plays here, but I'm not full stacking this team.
No, and I
just interrupt. Do you agree with Jim B here? No Kaprizov, no care.
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty good.
I think Jim said in there mild too, Minnesota mild. I think that's a pretty good way to put it right now.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, I think, I don't know, man. I kind of just want to take a stand and not play the Wild at all. The numbers are just so bleak offensively, but I do think that you can maybe get there a little bit. I might be at 15, 20% total ownership on the Wild forward group tonight. I think the defensemen are kind of more interesting plays to me. One thing that's interesting and I think worth noting here in this game too is the goaltending matchup. Obviously, Philip Gustafson is kind of starting to drop off a little bit here as of late. Mackenzie Blackwood's still solid this season, but both of these goalies have had no success against the other teams in their career. Philip Gustafson in 8 games played, 1 win, a 4.2 goals against average, and an 882 save percentage. Mackenzie Blackwood, granted, we got to remember what team he played for here before coming to Colorado, but only 1 win in 6 games with a 3.2 goals against average and an 897 save percentage. So the goaltenders have really struggled here. I think there might be some plays, but I just don't really see myself going super heavy here. I mean, I cannot for the life of me figure out why Minnesota 1 and Minnesota 2 are the 4th and 8th highest owned lines on the slate tonight. That is a lot of ownership that is coming in here on Minnesota 1 and 2, and they do not look to be, oh, look at that, even more accurate. I think I must have some old numbers. Okay, so here we go. 4th and 5th highest owned lines on the slate. Yeah, no thank you. I'm going to be coming in under the field here. Probably just have some one-offs of some of these guys. Zuccarello, $6,200 feels a little bit gross at that price point. He does have 5 goals and 30 points in 32 games against the Avalanche. But the rest of these guys have really struggled throughout their careers. The one saving grace with Boldy, I guess, is he seems to be one of the only guys who actually shoots the puck, the Minnesota Wild. So, you might get some volume there. But yeah, I don't know, man. It feels pretty bleak on this Minnesota side for me. I really don't see myself getting a whole lot of them.
Yeah, I'm trying not to overreact to ownership and stuff because I think it makes sense in some regard. There's just not a whole lot of value, and it's hard to find these cheap lines, so they're going to see more ownership with this new pricing. But when you look at the overall slate, I feel way better about the Leafs, and I feel way better about the Kings than I do the Wild, and they're seeing way lower ownership. So if this ends up being the case, then I'm going to come in way over the field on both of those teams and way under the field on the Wild. 25% ownership on Minnesota 1 and 2 seems crazy. They don't score at all. Let me see what in the only game Blackwood started against the Wild this year, he gave up 3 goals, and all of the Minnesota Wild depth players scored in that game. So maybe it leaves some hope that they're now depth that is now their second line can do some damage. But they don't really score. Coming out of the break here, they've scored 7 goals in 3 games. So and the Red Wings basically gifted them 2 late goals in that first game back. So yeah, not all that interested in this Minnesota Wild or the Mild Club tonight. Power play, as I mentioned, 5th best power play advantage for them as well. Going up against an Avs PK, that's been awesome. Just another reason not to want to play them. So I hope their ownership is high because I will not be in on that. Okay, let's get to some defensemen tonight. Then we'll get to our Goalies, hat-trick pick challenge, and our daily face-off, our head-to-head lineup challenge. Cale Makar projects as the best defenseman overall, also by far and away the most expensive. But yeah, he's still going to see about 21% ownership tonight. Grades out tremendously well. The Rangers defensemen are all going to be pretty solid plays, I think, just because they're going to all see a lot more ice time tonight. Braden Schneider, your boy, grades out the best. I'm a little surprised by that. I think I prefer Keandre Miller by a pretty substantial margin. He should be the one that eats up the biggest piece of the pie, I think, in terms of ice time left behind by Adam Fox. So Keandre Miller is probably my favorite one, then probably Schneider. And I really like mixing in Zach Jones if you need a minimum price defenseman. He's always been solid. He just never gets to play. But when he's in the lineup, he's been pretty decent. And at minimum price, if he plays like 18 minutes tonight, he is going to see some PB2 time. I think Zach Jones is a decent play at minimum price there from the Rangers side of things. Outside of the Rangers, the rest of the blue lines, I guess the Leafs kind of have some defensemen that could see some additional ice time tonight at cheap with Chris Tanev out. We're projecting that Morgan Riley, Oliver Ekman-Larsson are going to eat up the majority of that, but same with Jake McCabe. Philippe Myers is probably the other guy at minimum price, so Myers and Zach Jones are probably the two of the better options at minimum price tonight. Myers is going to be paired with Jake McCabe. Wouldn't be surprised if he's close to like 18 minutes tonight at minimum price. So if you need to go dumpster diving, which as we mentioned, there's not a lot of options for cheap to, for value. If you need to get $5,000 on two defensemen, maybe Zach Jones and Philippe Myers there for you tonight. Who are you going with tonight, Zach?
Yeah, Braden Schneider looks great. I think he might be one of my favorite plays defensively here tonight. If the ice is tilting the way we're kind of expecting here, with Toronto 1 really starting to run away with this one, Schneider looks to be in a great spot in terms of his block volume. 8 block shots per hour of ice time over his last 20 games played. He is blocking a ton of pills. Ryan Lindgren is up there as well with pretty good block volume. I'll be getting to a lot of these Rangers defensemen here. I like Jake Middleton at $3,700. I think he's a pretty solid play. Again, probably going to be seeing a lot of his ice time going up against Colorado 1. 5.7 blocks per hour for him over his last 20 games. Cale Makar, I think I'm going to find a way to get over the field on him tonight. Projecting for 20% ownership. He's probably going to be involved in it. And one thing, just harkening back to that Colorado 2 we were talking about, I love the idea of a Cale Makar, Nichushkin, Drouin mini stack. Hope they can capitalize on the power play there. I think that's a great way to get yourself a little bit different. And honestly, Thomas Harley at $5,500 or $5,400 also feels like just a tremendous play tonight at only 8.5% ownership. He's going to see a lot of ice time, solid block and shot volume equity for that guy there. So that's kind of where I'm looking at for the Blue Liners here.
Besides Colorado 1 and single entry, who are you targeting? Probably, like if I was fading Toronto or Colorado 1, it would probably be Toronto 1 or LA 1. Both of them just coming in wildly under owned, in my opinion. LA 1 specifically feels super low owned. I just don't like that game environment quite as much. So I'll go Toronto 1. They're super expensive, though. So one of those two, if I'm off Colorado 1, it would easily be Toronto 1 or LA 1. Are you feeling similar, Zach?
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. Probably LA 1 might be,
a little bit easier to build around.
Yeah, it might be a little bit easier to build around that way if you're fading that Colorado 1. A little tough to get Colorado 1 and LA 1 and feel super comfortable about it, I think.
Let's get to the goaltenders tonight. Again, smaller slates, a little bit more difficult. Mackenzie Blackwood projects as the best goalie overall, highest implied win percentage by a wide margin, only 2.1 implied goals against. Not tremendous volume, obviously. That's going to be kind of the case. Anthony Stolarz projects as the highest owned goalie on the slate tonight at $7,600. I think for pretty obvious reasons. Really solid play. They're road favorites. Going to see a decent amount of volume as well. Jake Ottinger, I think, is fine. Darcy Kemper draws a lot of my attention at $7,200. He's just been so good this year. I really do think the Kings can go in and win this game. So at $7,200, the cheapest goalie on the slate, he seems to make a lot of sense. I don't know why he's cheaper than Philip Gustafsson, but he is. And then Gustafsson, I think, is similar to the other night with Jake Allen. And for the most part, that Jake Allen play was working. And then it was kind of like a late flurry of goals. He ended up getting pulled, broke his stick. He was pissed off. The Devils kind of just gave up the third and just caved. He was a fine play, though. Jake Allen played well enough to keep you afloat for a while. And Gustafsson, we've seen him just have some outrageous performances this year. You talked about, like, he hasn't had a lot of success against this team. He hasn't had a lot of success against this team this year, but like he's had let's just count him. He's had 2 games of at least 40 saves, and he's had 5 games of at least 35 saves, and 14 of his 38 starts, which is like a third of the time, he makes 30 plus saves. So he's had some huge performances this year. I think if you're looking for a chalk buster tonight, Philip Gustafson, you could do worse. Like, I feel probably, it's hard to say. I think I liked the Devils' chances better of winning that game than I do the Wild tonight, but I like Philip Gustafson more than I like Jake Allen. So it's kind of a bit of a toss up there. So I don't mind playing him tonight in my Avs fades. I think he's a great leverage play. If they can somehow sneak out like a 3-2 win tonight, Gustafson's going to be a great play. But most of my interest coming in on Darcy Kemper, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Darcy Kemper looks like a really solid play at $7,200 tonight. One thing interesting about Gustafson, really kind of struggling here as of late in his last 10 games. 4-6 record, 3.5 goals against average, 892 save percentage. It's worth noting that in the one game that they did play against Colorado earlier this year, it was on home ice. And he's got some pretty notable home road splits this season. On home ice, he's 10-9 with a 305 goals against average and a 904 save percentage. Fine numbers there, but away from Minnesota, 12-3-3 record, 2.51 goals against average and a 924 save percentage. So he seems to be better when he's on the road, similarly to how Dustin Wolf has been all season long. So I think that's a reason I think I'm comfortable getting to some Gustafson here. I do like Darcy Kemper quite a bit, and honestly, I'm really in on Anthony Stolarz here. I know he's coming in as the highest projected goaltender in terms of ownership here tonight, but I think he looks like a real great play here. Again, we talk about liking the Leafs a lot here overall on this spot. I feel like he's a pretty solid play tonight.
Just a reminder, it's your last chance to get your name into the hat for a chance at a $50 gift card to Nation Gear. You can pick up some daily Faceoff swag. If you win tonight, all you got to do is drop a comment in the live chat, and we will do a draw at the end of the show. So you got a couple more minutes to get a comment in if you want a chance at that $50 gift card. If you want a chance at $25 gift card, all you got to do is comment your hat-trick pick in the comment section of the video on YouTube. If your player scores a hat trick, we'll get you a $25 gift card to Nation Gear. So you could end up walking away with $75 to Nation Gear tonight if you get a hat trick pick and win the draw. If a player scores a hat trick and nobody picks him, we will just randomly give it away to somebody who dropped a hat trick pick in the comment section. So make sure you get your picks in. Zach, I won yesterday. Well, not yesterday. 2 days ago, head to head. So I will pick first. I am going to go with Kevin Fiala. I really like LA1. I think they're in an interesting spot tonight. I'm going to go with Fiala. How about you?
Going to go a little bit off the board. Let's go with the Cale Makar hattie tonight. Let's see
Whoa.
It's done in Minnesota.
Very nice. So yeah, if you want to participate, just drop your hat trick pick in the comment section of the video on YouTube. Smash your like button, or smash the like button while you're there. Let's get to today's daily face-off, our head-to-head lineup challenge. Fairly similar lineups tonight without a whole lot of value on the slate, but I went with Nathan McKinnon, Martin Necas mini stack, and then I went with the Warren Fogle, Trevor Moore mini stack to get a little bit of value in there. I had to really punt off the defenseman, so as I mentioned, I like Zach Jones, so I went with a little Zach Jones, Will Cooley mini stack, a little power play 2 correlation. They should see a decent amount of ice time at 5v5. Cooley feels like one of the better value plays on the slate. Zach Jones as well. I don't mind him at $2,500. And then I also paired Joel Edmondson with my Trevor Moore, Warren Fogle stack. But like, I just keep playing Edmondson because he plays a bunch and he hasn't done shit for like 5 games. So hopefully he picks it up tonight. His price keeps dropping down. And then that left me with $9,000 to go with Austin Matthews. And then I have Darcy Kemper between the pipes. So fairly similar lineups, but we have a few differentiating players. Who do you got?
Yeah, went with very similar build to you. I think for obvious reasons. I mean, LA3, their price point is pretty easy to get them into the mix here. I went with the Austin Matthews one-off here as well. Toronto One really like their spot here tonight. Obviously, McKinnon and Necas. For me, defenseman and goaltender, obviously a differentiating point here for us. Calvin DeHaan, $2,500 feels fine as a minimum price defenseman. I had Braden Schneider in there originally instead of Ryan Lindgren, but I wanted to get up to Stolarz, so needed the money there as well. And then really punted off with Miles Wood at $2,600. Don't necessarily love it or anything like that, but I had pretty limited salary left over. He only plays like 10 minutes a night, but he takes 9.1 shots on goal per hour. So if he can go out there and rifle a few pucks, maybe find a way to magically get on the score sheet, that'd be pretty cool for me tonight.
Here in Canada, we call him Kilometers Wood. Thank you. Let's get to our Javier comes in with a last minute. Good luck, everyone, to get his name into the draw. I think he's already won one, too. So if he comes in with a last minute win, that would be something. Okay, let's get to today's $50 draw. Here we go. Best of luck with 20 entries tonight. Almost Javier. SMK5430. Congratulations. If you are in the DFO DFS Discord, you can reach out to me there. If not, you can reach out to me on X at DFO Fantasy or at Brock_Seguin. So congratulations. There we have. That's going to do it for another week of the DFO DFS report. Shout out to our friends at rotogrinders.com for providing projected ownership for today's show. If you want to get $20 off your first month of RotoGrinders Premium, you can do so by clicking the link in the description of the video on YouTube. Also in the description is the link to our DFO DFS Discord. It's a community that's growing every single day. We've got channels for different DFS sports. If you need some help playing NBA or MLB with that season coming up soon, we've got channels there for that as well. If you need some help there, and we also provide all the late breaking news and warm ups, new lineup changes, new lines, all that fun stuff, and just chatting DFS all day long. Lots of smart and fun people in there. So come on, join the party and smash the like button if you're watching on YouTube. It really helps us grow this channel. It really helps us grow this show. Helps us bring you all this information 100% free. I don't think there's too many other people out there with 100% free DFS projections and we kind of go above and beyond here at Daily Faceoff. So just continue to support us any way you can. Much appreciated. Thank you guys so much. Have a great weekend. Stay safe out there. We'll see you back here on Monday. Until then, cheers.
Cheers.